Imagine waking up to a world where the front lines of national security are not distant battlefields, but the quiet fields outside your hometown, the unassuming warehouses at the edge of your city, and the digital devices in your very own pocket. The struggle for global dominance is no longer confined to the visible arenas of military might or diplomatic maneuvering. Instead, it has seeped into the very fabric of everyday American life, quietly reshaping the landscape in ways that often go unnoticed, until it is too late. For decades, the United States welcomed foreign investment with open arms. It was seen as a cornerstone of economic vitality, a testament to the enduring allure of the American dream. Investors from Europe, Canada, and beyond poured billions into skyscrapers, factories, and vast tracts of farmland. This influx brought jobs, prosperity, and global prestige. But as the world has changed, so too has the nature of this investment. In the past 10 years, a new player has emerged on the scene: China. Unlike many Western investors, Chinese companies often operate under the watchful eye and sometimes direct control of the Chinese Communist Party. Their motives are not always strictly commercial. Let's look at a concrete example. In May of the year 2024, the Biden administration took the extraordinary step of forcing a Chinese-backed cryptocurrency mining operation, situated alarmingly close to a United States missile base, to sell its assets. The reason? Mounting fears about national security. This was not an isolated incident. Across the country, more than 20 states have debated or enacted laws to block foreign, and especially Chinese, purchases of land near military sites or critical infrastructure. Think power plants, communications hubs, and major ports. The United States Treasury Department is even considering sweeping new rules to monitor and potentially block real estate transactions that could threaten national security. But the challenge goes far deeper than who owns the dirt beneath our feet. Over the past several years, Chinese-manufactured drones have become standard equipment for law enforcement agencies across the country. Chinese-made solar converters are being installed in our power grids, and social media apps with opaque ownership structures have found their way onto the phones of tens of millions of Americans. According to Michael Sobolik, a leading expert on China policy, the Chinese Communist Party is preparing to paralyze us in a crisis through United States infrastructure penetration. On the surface, the numbers might seem reassuring. Chinese ownership of United States agricultural land amounts to less than 1% of all foreign-held land. Canada and the Netherlands, for example, own far greater shares. But this statistic does not tell the whole story. Experts warn that Chinese interests have established footholds not just in agriculture but in technology, ports, and especially in the digital infrastructure that forms the backbone of modern life. These holdings, often obscured by layers of shell companies and complex investment vehicles, raise the specter of sabotage and espionage from within. Gabriel Noronha, president of Polaris National Security, puts it bluntly: America's enemies will try to replicate the drone playbook on our soil. He draws a chilling parallel to recent events overseas. Israel's covert drone base in Iran and Ukraine's audacious drone strikes deep inside Russian territory demonstrate how easily modern technology, paired with local assets, can inflict devastating damage. The lesson is clear. Clandestine operations are no longer the stuff of spy novels. They are a present-day reality, and America's own openness may be its greatest vulnerability. The legislative response has been a frantic race to catch up with the evolving threat. State legislatures are rushing to restrict land sales to entities from countries deemed adversaries. The federal government has banned the procurement and use of certain Chinese-made drones by federal agencies and placed restrictions on Chinese telecom equipment over fears of espionage. However, critics argue that these efforts are piecemeal and reactive, rather than proactive and strategic. Michael Lucci, the head of State Armor Action, warns that Chinese Communist Party land ownership is bad, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. Their industrial property holdings are worse, as is their deep penetration of critical infrastructure and government systems. The concern is not merely about who owns the land, but about who controls the ports where goods flow in and out, who operates the data centers processing sensitive information, and who can manipulate the industrial systems that keep the nation running. To illustrate the potential consequences, consider a scenario that experts say is entirely plausible. Imagine a sudden crisis, perhaps a geopolitical conflict or a coordinated cyber attack. Overnight, Chinese-owned solar converters embedded in the United States power grid begin to fail, plunging entire regions into darkness. Simultaneously, fleets of drones, manufactured by companies with opaque ties to Beijing, malfunction or go rogue near key military installations, sowing confusion and chaos. These are not the plot lines of a dystopian thriller. They are plausible threats, as emphasized by security analysts like Michael Sobolik. The threat extends beyond the physical realm. Chinese technology companies have made significant inroads into American digital infrastructure. TikTok, a social media platform with an estimated user base in the tens of millions in the United States, has come under scrutiny for its data collection practices and alleged ties to the Chinese government. Lawmakers and regulators have raised concerns that sensitive personal data could be siphoned off and used for espionage or influence operations. In response, several states have banned the app on government devices, and federal legislation to restrict its use is under consideration. Meanwhile, the American Security Drone Act of 2023 prohibits the federal government from purchasing or deploying drones manufactured in countries deemed security threats, including China. This law was enacted in response to mounting evidence that data collected by these devices could be transmitted back to foreign intelligence agencies. In a similar vein, the United States Department of Defense has banned the use of Google Maps to capture images of military bases, citing the risk of sensitive information being exposed. But while these measures have drawn headlines, experts caution that the real danger lies in what is not seen. Ports, for example, are among the most sensitive assets in the nation's infrastructure portfolio. Many are operated by companies with complex and opaque ownership structures, some with indirect Chinese investment. These ports handle vast quantities of goods, data, and even military equipment. A single act of sabotage or disruption at a major port could send shockwaves through the entire economy. Data centers represent another hidden vulnerability. Increasingly, these critical facilities are being acquired by foreign investors. Because they house the servers that power everything from banking to healthcare, their security is paramount. Yet, the tangled web of global finance can make it difficult to determine who truly controls these assets. Missing these hidden vulnerabilities could have devastating consequences in the event of a crisis. Let's not forget the agricultural sector. While Chinese ownership of farmland is relatively small, the symbolism is powerful. Food security has become a hot-button issue, with concerns extending not just to who owns the land, but who controls the supply chains. In states like South Dakota, Governor Kristi Noem has warned that foreign ownership of farmland could give adversaries leverage over the nation's food supply. Indiana State Representative Kendall Culp echoes these concerns, noting that the level of concern about China far exceeds that of other countries when it comes to food security risks. The federal government has begun to respond, but many believe the actions taken so far are insufficient. In June of the year 2025, the United States Treasury Department proposed new rules designed to expand oversight of foreign real estate transactions. These rules would give the government broader authority to scrutinize deals near military bases, energy infrastructure, and other sensitive sites. Yet, as Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin points out, the federal government has not sufficiently addressed the threats from China acquiring real estate. State governments are taking matters into their own hands. In Arizona, for instance, legislators passed a bill to block Chinese entities from acquiring more than a 30% stake in any real estate, particularly near a major Air Force base. However, the bill was vetoed by Governor Katie Hobbs, illustrating the deep political divisions that complicate efforts to address these threats. In total, more than 20 states have introduced or passed laws aimed at restricting foreign land ownership, especially from nations designated as adversaries. The consequences of inaction could be profound. Michael Lucci warns that if the United States does not get serious about interrupting China's asset grab, it risks losing a future conflict not on the battlefield, but in the heart of its own homeland. The risk is not just land ownership, but the aggregation of control over critical infrastructure, digital networks, and supply chains. So, what does the future hold if these trends continue unchecked? Several scenarios emerge. One possibility is an escalation of regulations, leading to a significant reduction in Chinese investment and a corresponding increase in trade tensions. This could hurt American exporters and disrupt global markets, but proponents argue it is necessary to safeguard national security. A second scenario is a more targeted approach, with restrictions focused on sectors deemed most critical, such as energy, telecommunications, and defense, while allowing continued investment in less sensitive areas. This would require a nuanced understanding of risk and a willingness to adapt as threats evolve. A third and more troubling scenario is a continuation of the current trajectory. Incremental policy changes, ongoing debates, and no comprehensive strategy. In this scenario, vulnerabilities remain unaddressed, and adversaries continue to exploit the gaps. As Michael Sobolik notes, the window is closing fast. What can everyday Americans do in the face of such complex threats? First and foremost, awareness is key. Understanding that national security now encompasses not just military might, but also economic and technological resilience, is crucial. Citizens living near sensitive sites, such as Air Force bases, ports, or major data centers, should pay attention to who is buying land and which companies are moving into their communities. Local activism can drive smarter policymaking, and public pressure can force leaders to take action. On a personal level, individuals can make choices that enhance their own security and that of the nation. Supporting companies that are transparent about their ownership and security practices helps to reduce risk. Being mindful of the digital devices and apps you use, especially those with foreign ties, can limit the amount of sensitive data that could be exploited in a crisis. If your state is holding hearings or considering new laws about foreign investment, make your voice heard. It is also vital for policymakers to recognize that land bans alone are not enough. The interconnected nature of modern society means that vulnerabilities can be exploited through a variety of channels, be it financial systems, supply chains, or digital networks. A comprehensive approach to national security must take all these factors into account. There is a critical lesson to be learned from recent events overseas. Israel's ability to build a covert drone base inside Iran and Ukraine's audacious drone strikes against Russian airfields were made possible by years of careful planning and the exploitation of local resources. America must not assume that it is immune to similar tactics. As Gabriel Noronha warned, it is increasingly dangerous to allow Chinese companies and individuals to own land, especially near our military bases and critical infrastructure. Left unchecked, we are opening our land to host clandestine Chinese military bases to launch all sorts of attacks and cripple our nation in wartime. The stakes could not be higher. As each new report emerges of foreign ownership near critical sites, and as more devices with hidden vulnerabilities are connected to the nation's infrastructure, the line between economic opportunity and national vulnerability becomes ever more blurred. The evidence is mounting, and so too are the risks. So, what can actually be done to protect the United States? Experts agree that a multi-layered strategy is required. This includes tightening regulations on foreign investment, especially in sensitive sectors, enhancing transparency in corporate ownership structures, investing in cybersecurity and infrastructure resilience, and perhaps most importantly, fostering a culture of vigilance and accountability at every level of government and society. The good news is that it is not too late. Legislators are waking up to the risks, and new laws are being debated and enacted almost every month. But the window for decisive action is narrowing. The real challenge is to move beyond reactive measures and develop a proactive, comprehensive strategy that addresses the full spectrum of threats. Here is a fact most people miss. While headlines scream about farmland, the most sensitive assets are often the ports and data centers quietly controlled through complex international deals. Overlooking these hidden vulnerabilities could have consequences far more severe than losing a few acres of farmland. Now, more than ever, it is essential to stay alert, stay informed, and demand action from leaders at all levels. This issue is about far more than real estate or investment flows. It is about who will control the future of America's infrastructure, economy, and ultimately, its security. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with someone who cares about national security.